So my opponent puts out these General Assembly updates during session, and she just put out one for the end of session. And I just found something really interesting. She alluded to the budget and didn't mention the fact that she was one of 18 people that voted against it. Now, she hinted that there was flaws in it, and then pointed out how Youngkin can line item veto things, and that if he vetoes any legislation that has a budget attachment to it, that would change the budget. But it doesn't say why she voted against it, because those things are true no matter what type of budget it is. But let's talk about a few things that were in the budget that she voted against. I have a list here. So she voted against law enforcement funding, a 1.5% salary increase that was going to go towards state supported employees. Officers are, in fact, state employees, so they would fall into this category. Teacher safety funding. So generally speaking, she voted against a 782.4 million increase over the biennium that would support public K through 12. Everything, including Republicans and Democrats, have agreed that we are not adequately funding public education in Virginia, so she voted against that. Now, mind you, with everything going on at the federal level and threats of defunding public education through the DOE, these budget issues are pretty critical for Virginia's education system. And then finally, public safety funding. She voted against $18 million for public safety. This included funding for violence prevention efforts within communities, inmate health care, domestic violence and sexual assault witness programs, career and technical education opportunities for inmates, and reimbursements of local law enforcement transportation for transporting individuals under emergency custody or temporary detention orders. So this is just a few of the highlights that she voted against, again, giving no legitimate reason. I also find it interesting she made the claim that Republicans were targeted in legislative policy not being brought to the table. First of all, while I don't agree with it, this is something that both parties, when in control, do historically. However, it's worth noting that countless Republicans brought policy to the table and had it make it to the finish line, both on their own as well as in a bipartisan effort where they did legislation with a person on the other side of the aisle. And finally, I thought this was an interesting comment. Now, because of all of the workforce cuts, we are already seeing a spike in unemployment here in Virginia of federal workers who have lost their jobs. They put the House kind of in limbo because they have this special session that could be called at any time. And basically, she's like, we're tiptoeing even closer to becoming a full time legislator. I'm not a fan. Now, I understand as someone running that obviously this is a part time citizen led legislative body. However, we have unprecedented times where a massive number of Virginia employees have their jobs on the line. And they are wondering how they're going to pay their bills, put food on their table, keep a roof over their families' heads. Like, these are legitimate Virginians at fear, not to mention the budget resolution that also passed at a congressional body that is going to likely end Medicaid expansion for 630,000 Virginians, of which roughly 4 to 5,000 reside in our district. So while I understand that, this is inconvenient, this is your job. You are a public servant, and that is what you have been elected to do. Finally, she has shown her hand that she will be intending to spend around $1 million dollars on this campaign. Now, mind you, this is only about $370,000 more than what she spent last cycle, where I comparably spent a third of that, around $250,000. And yet, my dollar per vote was clearly more efficient. And the bottom line is, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to knock the doors. I have a bigger infrastructure. I do realize that this race is going to be more expensive than the last cycle as well, because we have been deemed a tier one top competitive race, and I'm excited about that. So, what that means is, like her, I too need to fundraise. However, the difference between me and her is I will not be getting large lump sums from corporations. So, there is that. As always, link in bio, and it's going to be an interesting year.